Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast for the third annual pre-draft eve mock-up. I don't know. We should think of a better name for this. He is the world famous, the best in the business, Bleacher Report's own Jonathan Wasserman.
How many of your guests are the best in the business?
You know, my friend, many are good, but the best? No. No, Andrew, who's the best? It's just, I don't think anyone.
Well, nobody in my book is the best in the business compared to Mr. Wasserman, because it is yet another time where a Mets fan joins us here on the Knicks Film School Podcast. And we got to stick together out here because things are good. Things are real good for us right now.
Jonathan. Things are good. In fact, I left my hat in the other room. I'm disappointed I didn't bring it in.
Don't worry. I'm wearing it for both of us, even though this will not be airing throughout the rest of the interview.
I want to start just with a general question. Well, kind of general, kind of related to a specific team and a specific pick. As you said, we always hear a bunch of shit in the days leading up to the draft, and a lot of it's nonsense. Teams just trying to see what they could get, and then oftentimes not much ends up happening. Do you feel that this year is unique in any way in that there is nothing's ever consensus, but more or less a consensus fourth guy on the most teams' boards after the top three. And that player has come out and said, he didn't say in his many words, he was like, I'm not going to Sacramento, or I don't want to go to Sacramento. I have no desire to I haven't talked to them. What did he say? It would be the worst thing in the world. I wish someone would have followed him up with like, well, what would be worse than going to the Kings?
A really indirect way of saying, I don't want to go there.
Yeah. Does this make it unique, or is just kind of the same song and dance?
I mean, we've kind of heard that story before. It's definitely like, usually, I guess it starts to get murky at 2 and 3, but it seems like everyone is the same four guys at the top. I mean, I would say, I don't know anyone that has a different top four. Okay. The order is a little different within the three, but like there's the big three freshman bigs. Jaden Ivey is next. For anyone I've really spoken to, and I can't speak to the 300 staffers in the NBA. So I'm sure there's somebody who thinks that Ivey's overrated, but man, he's pretty much like the consensus number 4 guy. And it makes for an interesting dilemma here at number 4 with Sacramento and De'Aaron Fox and their need to win now, and teams looking to move up who need a guard. So like the second that the lottery order came out, you knew that this type of talk was going to happen.
Do you get a sense from talking to whoever you've been talking to that, because I feel like I've read somewhere that Vivek Ranadive, the Kings owner, was maybe a little involved in terms of like, if we want Ivey, we're going to take Ivey, or that's what like somebody had heard or reported, or how do you think they're going to operate with this?
I think they're going to try and have a bidding war for the pick.
Okay.
Like, as everybody's saying, the price right now is steep. And of course, as we get closer to draft night, it's going to drop a little bit just to make it realistic. But there are going to be a bunch of teams who want Ivey, and they know that that's going to be the guy who's going to be there. There's going to be there's certainty around that they're going to get one of those top 4 guys. Like, it's possible OKC surprises everyone and then takes Ivey, but then still there's somebody really good at number 4 anyway,
sure.
One of those 2 other bigs. And so I think they're going to try and, have a bidding war, get a lot of people involved, see what the best offer is. And I don't know what their offers are going to be like. Like, I don't know if anybody's going to offer a star, or what they think of John Collins, or would they rather take a package of like, Obi and picks, or Quickly and picks and stuff like that. I don't know exactly what they want. And nobody really knows what they want.
That was going to be my next question. Does anybody have a set? Because like, we could sit in here and talk about like, is a future Knicks potentially unprotected pick the best asset you could have in the league outside of a Kings future unprotected pick, and they can't trade for their own pick. So like, I don't know, that might be really valuable to them.
Right. Yeah, no, I saw Begley's report. What did he say? It was multiple first rounders plus a young player.
I think he said they've discussed multiple firsts, and then he surmised that it would probably take that and a good young player.
Right. That's exactly. I mean, I'm guessing it would take they wouldn't settle on that until they found out that there was like not another star that they could get plus picks. Again, nothing's going to happen until right before the draft when it comes to that Kings pick. And at this point, I'm guessing based on the offers I'm hearing, that they're going to end up sticking and they're going to keep the pick. And they could always, like we just saw what they did with Halliburton. They could take Halliburton and they could take Ivy and then trade him. They've shown a willingness to do that, where you take the most valuable asset, figure out if it works, and you could still trade him after the draft.
Sure.
So they could still take Ivy, knowing that demand is still going to be there after the draft. And maybe demand might be higher. Teams might feel a little more desperate knowing what they were left with after they didn't get Ivy. So in my mind, I still have them taking Ivy just based on logic, just based on him being the consensus best player available. Of course, I saw that they took Keegan Murray out to dinner. I don't really see the Keegan Murray thing. Like everyone talks about he's the easier fit. Well, is he really the easier fit? I mean, he kind of is the same position. I don't see him as a wing. I see him more as a big. And so I don't know. I don't think that's the easiest fit either. And I still think I don't know anyone that likes Keegan Murray more than Ivy. So they would really, really have to value character. Not to say Ivy's a bad dude or anything. Keegan's got has a great character reputation in terms of being just a good guy who blends in, is really low maintenance, and just a very likable kid. So if they put a lot of stock into that, then I could see it. But man, Ivy is better, higher on board than every other board I've ever talked to.
Last question on the Kings before we move on to an organization that maybe we'll know a little bit more about. Could they do anything that would truly shock you, whether it's trading De'Aaron Fox, taking Murray outright? Is there any move that they could make that would absolutely floor you?
Shaedon Sharpe at 4. That would be my, if I would have bet money on something, that nobody's thinking about. I've heard, and it's a weird thing to hear. It's I heard a team in the top 4 really like Shaedon Sharpe. I also know that it could be Oklahoma City, a trade down situation.
Sure.
Sharpe is if you're going to do something crazy, Sharpe was the number 1 ranked recruit, and just all number 1 ranked recruits turn out to be good players at the least. And so if they're not in love with the fit with Ivy, because he's probably a negative shooter early in his career, and that's your 3 best players with Fox, Sabonis, and Ivy, negative shooter. I mean, if they're thinking about that, and you can make a case that Sharpe has as much upside as any player not named of the top 3, or even including the top 3. And he's a shooter. So I could see in terms of upside, in terms of fit, that Sharpe would be a wild card pick at 4.
I know it's mostly, you're getting asked about Intel at this time of year, but I do just want to ask really one quick question on Ivy. Do you think he's worth this much trouble or this much attention?
I mean, it depends what worth we're talking about. And when you're talking about the Knicks,
in terms of upside, is the upside real in your mind with him?
So I was just going back. I was looking and was just comparing numbers to Ja Morant. I know he gets the Ja Morant comparison a lot. I don't think that's the same archetype of player. I actually think he's more like Oladipo. But I would say he's an 80% of Ja Morant. I mean, I think he's got the chance to be an all-star, but not a Morant type guy who can totally change your team. I don't think Ivy's changing any team by himself. You still have to build a team with him. But can he be a 2 or 3 guy on a winning team? I think he can. But he's the right fit, and he's probably not helping change a team next year. I mean, he's got some. He's not a great decision maker. He's not a great shooter off the dribble. But if you're thinking long term and you put the right structure, the right team around him, I think he's got a chance to be a key piece to a winning team. Yeah. Okay.
Moving down the draft board a little bit, it feels like we have heard reports: Portland at 7, New Orleans at 8, maybe not San Antonio, but Washington at 10, and obviously our beloved New York Knicks at 11. Everybody wants to trade their pick potentially for win now talent. It feels not. I don't want to say it feels strange to me, but what's your best explanation? What is no one just very high on the talent that's going to be there, or they just want to try to get something better?
I think some of the worst value in the draft is late lottery.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I just think once you miss on those top 3 guys, and Ivy has the next, has star potential, perceived to have star potential. Keegan Murray just feels like a safe pick. He's going to be an NBA starter for a while.
Okay.
And then and Shaden Sharp has that start. Once you get past Sharp, I mean, we're talking about now Ben Mathurin as like the number 5 or number 6 pick. I mean, to me, that's a weak 5 or 6 pick.
Okay.
In another draft. And Jalen Duren, like, he's probably going to be a starting center, but he's just not super exciting. Johnny Davis, I'm not too high on as a top 10 guy. I think you just start to lose excitement over those guys. AJ Griffin's fine. He's going to be a starter, I would imagine. But it's nothing to like celebrate, if you get him at 10 in the draft. You feel fine about it, but you don't really enter a draft with him as like a main target. He's more of a plan B. Most of those guys are plan Bs, I think, in that 8 to 14 range. So I think you either want to move up or you maybe want to move down if you're in the late lottery range. I just think that's where the weakest value is.
And we also have heard, I feel like, about teams that are a little bit lower down on the draft board that are trying to move up. Is this like something where they have a guy in mind and they want to make sure they get him, or they are some of maybe those teams lower down the board sensing that teams a little higher are not in love with any of these guys and they may be able to get one of these picks on the cheap? Like, you had a great tweet today saying from 11 to 30, no one's in love with any of these guys. So if anybody puts a 2023 first on the table, you're going to be able to get some real value in this draft.
Yeah, no, I think that's part. I have a prediction that teams are going to just be looking to get out. Once their guys are off the board, it's like, well, if I could just swap this pick for 2023, then I do it. I'm sure some teams have certain targets, like a Dyson Daniels, for example, is like becoming an attractive, unique player who you could probably get in the late lottery. And it may not take a lot to get into the late lottery this year. So I don't know. It's different for every team. The Hawks, the team I continue to hear, are like really pushing to move.
It feels like they're in every rumor.
Yeah. They must be making a lot of phone calls to a lot of different teams, because you always hear these rumors. You don't hear them like from the Hawks. You hear other teams who are like,
sure,
yeah, the Hawks made an offer. All this stuff is indirect intel. It's just kind of weird, but that's just the way it is. I mean, like, it's not like the Magic are like telling people who they're going to take. You're hearing from other teams who have friends in the Magic organization, so it's tough to say what exactly every team is doing, but Atlanta is definitely the hottest, as the name mentioned, most of a team looking to move up.
You mentioned Johnny Davis before. I want to pick your brain for a second about him, because I feel like in a league where shot creation is efficient shot creation is the name of the game. He's like, watching the tape, it feels like he is the most shot creatory guy. And yet, if you try to translate his skill set to something that's more of an off-ball role, whether it's about his like release point, whether it's about his like 3-point percentage, where it ended up, or all that stuff, the picture gets less pretty. Do you think where he's settled into in terms of the draft is more like a result of? Well, I'll just come out and ask you, why do you think he settled into this range of the draft given his particular skill set?
I don't think everyone's buying the shot create. What did you call it?
Creation-y.
His creation-y is a little bit overrated, I think, in my opinion. No, I mean, he had like a 32% usage this year. He was involved in every play. Like, he improved a lot as a creator. I think a lot of the shots he created were tough.
Yeah.
And if you look at just going and doing like a deep dive in the numbers, like if you look at a listing of guys who took as many mid-range shots as he did and had as few assists as he did, it's like the list of guys is bad.
Not what you want. Okay.
So he's a high usage guy who doesn't get you assists, and most of the shots he takes are contested twos. The analytics guys probably don't like him. With Johnny Davis, and I was being harsh when I said I'm not a fan of his. Like, I'm a fan of his, I guess, in the late lottery of this draft.
Okay.
I don't see like the star player he was in college. I compare him to Josh Hart. That's been my comparison all year. Okay. I think he's going to be a nice complementary scorer. Certainly, I don't see like a star, like top 2 option. It's just the type of guy he is. What I do see translating, though, is the effort, the energy, the competitiveness. And just, I love the fact that he makes big shots. Like, he's got balls. Like, he's somebody you want to put the rock in his hands at the end of a quarter. And you feel like, I remember just watching this year, anytime Julius Randle had the ball at the end of a quarter, you expected like a step back miss. I feel more comfortable with Johnny Davis at the end of a quarter. You just feel, you trust him a little bit more, and you could just see it in his eyes. Like, he cannot wait to take that shot. And so I like that stuff about him. But in terms of a guy I want to like build around and
sure,
give him 30% of my offense to, not quite.
Jonathan, I trust you more at the end of the clock than I do Julius Randle, or at least the version that we saw.
If my feet are set and I'm in the corner and I'm in rhythm, then I feel creating my own shot right now in my 30s is a struggle.
Only since his name came up, I just have to ask. It's not really a draft question, although I guess it kind of is. Do you have any clue as to what Julius Randle's value is around the league at the moment? Because I don't.
No, I don't. I mean, it's obviously not. It's not. You're not going to get much for him. I don't think it's like negative. Some of the stuff
that's what I'm asking.
I don't think it's like negative where you have to like attach a first round pick just to get rid of him. But I don't think teams are going to give up like young players or future picks for him. I think it's a weird spot. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a guy go so high and go so low so fast. I mean, I would say like the at one point, the best thing to happen for the Knicks was Julius Randle becoming this star. And the worst thing to happen to the Knicks was Julius Randle becoming that star. And suddenly, like, where the expectations change, he gets the contract, and then we find out, shit, it was kind of fluky. And so now they're kind of stuck. So it's a really rare situation what happened with him.
Yeah, it is for sure. The other guy you mentioned before, picked your brain about is AJ Griffin. We don't have to talk about his tape because I mean it's kind of, I mean, he's a shooter and he doesn't. Does he do anything else well in your estimation right now? Because I would not feel comfortable saying that he does.
So I'll say this: like I wrote an article 3 years ago, and it was like picking the young guy. He must have been 16 years old. He was 16 actually. He played for the U16 USA team, and I said he's the number one overall candidate. He would be my pick if I had to make a ridiculous, as we do the way too early projections.
Sure, yeah.
But I had him as the number one guy. Like there were flashes of shot creation. Actually, shooting wasn't even his thing. It was more shot making. Like he was a high level shot maker. In fact, there was like fadeaways. It was step backs, and he was doing it at 6'6", 210 pounds at 16 years old. And so maybe there's more creation to tap into there.
Okay,
he's not a great athlete. That creation is probably going to have to be a lot of like east-west stuff, like those tough shots for him to really maximize his potential.
Like RJ.
Sure. Like, but RJ's so good at getting downhill. Like, I don't see Griffin getting downhill a lot. In fact, he took like 1.2 free throws a game or something like that. Like, he just does not put a lot of pressure on the rim. And so for him to really, bust through his ceiling and be more than a shooter, he's going to have to just be a high level shot creator from three levels. And I still think it's possible. He really is. I don't know if he's the youngest. He's not the youngest guy in the draft, but he's pretty close.
I think it's Duran and then Griffin, and I feel like I'm forgetting an international guy.
Yeah. Jovic is young. Jang is young. Anyway, but he's young, and he's obviously his body is not normal for an 18-year-old.
No,
he seems pretty self-aware and a smart kid. Like he's somebody you would want to bet on. The injury concerns are did they play a role in why he seems so slow? Is he going to get more explosive over the years? He had a bad knee in high school. He started off behind the eight ball at Duke because he didn't play in the beginning, and his role was really small, and then he got bigger. So I don't know. I think he's a safe pick. Is the outcome? The chances of his outcome becoming star are pretty small, but I do think there is a path to upside there.
All right, a couple more. Let me get you out of here. I'm going to try not to get in trouble with this next question with anybody who listens. So the Brogdon stuff is out there. We've heard differing things. Ian Begley had a report a couple hours ago before we were recording this saying that like people with the Pacers came away with the impression that Brogdon is not their top option. Like the way you're talking about the players who are going to probably be on the board for the Knicks, would it shock you if they did a deal centered around the 11th pick for a guy like Malcolm Brogdon?
You'd think it would shock me, even though like he's got to be tempting because there's a maturity about his game. But, based on Rose's decisions over the 2 years that he's been with the Knicks, like he's a quick fix to nowhere. It's how much better does he make them next year? And then you have to commit to him. And, the injury history is obvious, but I'm sure they would love to get him if they didn't have to pay a price for him, or they can get some shitty contracts off. But I just don't see it happening.
Okay. I hope you're right. I really do. Because I'm like you. I think he's a road to nowhere, and that's not to disparage him as a basketball player. I think he's a decent player. He's
just not for this team at this exact moment.
Thank you.
Might as well play quickly 25 minutes.
Well, we could have all kinds of conversations.
Stop myself short to get into that because we could be here all day. Yeah.
Do you still like Quickly a lot?
Do I like him a lot? I do. I think he can contribute to winning in the right role. I've always been hesitant to say he's, the Knicks point guard of the future.
Sure.
I still love when he plays to his strengths. I always call him like a great player to have when you're losing. Just put him in and let him make plays. But can you trust him to run offense and make the right decisions and balance the scoring with playmaking? And I will say I was totally wrong about Quickly. He was 40 on my board, so I was wrong about him to begin with. I didn't see any of this coming, particularly like how crafty and fun he is to watch with some of his moves and shots. So just that to me is a surprise. But I enjoy when he's in the game. I think he makes the team better when the right guys are around him and they're playing with energy and maybe, it's looser. That's why I said when they're down and he doesn't have to be as tight and he can just play his game and not think, that's when he's best.
I like that. Okay. We'll get out here on some quick ones. We had 3 years in a row. What was it? Cam Johnson and then Jalen Smith and then Josh Primo with the Spurs last year. A real surprise in the top 10. Well, actually, I think two of those were at 10 and maybe one was another, whatever. It was around 10. Are we going to get something of that ilk in this year's draft, do you think?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised this year just because there's nobody like I was saying, there's nobody super exciting. So why not take a chance on a guy like, the way Spurs did with Josh Primo? Jalen Williams, Santa Clara would be my pick of surprise guys. I mean, he's just really likable and safe, and he fits the game so easily, and he's going to fit any team playing 1 through 3. I mean, I don't even know. He might be more of a 2-3 than a 1-2. I don't even think it matters. I just think he's an easy fit, and he's crushing interviews, and everybody likes him. And some team might just say, screw it. Let's just play it safe with this guy that we know is going to fit. We know we're going to like as a character guy. And so he'd be my surprise option in the top 13 or so.
Okay. Inverse question. Is there someone that's currently projected to go on the higher side that you think falls?
I wouldn't be shocked if Duran slipped outside the lottery.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I also wouldn't be shocked if he goes 7, but he's just one of those guys where it's like you can kind of get centers who don't shoot, create, fairly cheap on the free agent market. And, maybe, Robert Williams is changing my mind. And I always think of him. I'm thinking of Duran as like a final link to help a team, not somebody you start to build with. You know what I'm saying? Like with Mitchell Robinson, like the only reason I'd be hesitant about Mitchell Robinson is he doesn't really make them that much better over the next 3 years. But a team that's like missing that rim protector might want to add Mitchell Robinson, and that would elevate them. So I don't know. I think depending on the team and their mindset, Duran is a possibility who could slip. But that's just me. If I had to pick somebody, I'm not guessing that he does slip.
Okay. The Knicks have the 42nd pick in the draft. Anyone you like? Top of the second round?
Yeah. I mean, somebody's in this. I really like Josh Minot from Memphis, and I
think Hollinger had him at like 10th on his list or something for this draft recently.
10th is a stretch. 10th
that's a stretch.
Statement there that you like him. A lot would have to go right over the next few years, but I don't know. To me, he's just an upside guy with first round. I think I had him in the top 30 to start the year. I think he played 15 minutes a game. It's like, how do you have that much confidence? A guy who plays so little and he's not much of a shooter. Although he showed up to the combine and I was sitting with the scout and he was like totally writing down like, oh, changed his shot mechanics. Like he's making an effort to improve his shooting, doing something different, which you feel good about. But to me, he's, in a group full of in a crapshoot area, to me, he's a guy with first round potential. But I mean, we could do this all day. There's a lot of interesting guys. I don't know who's going to be there. I like Andrew Nembhard, although I'm told he won't be there, and I'm also told that the Knicks didn't bring him in. Ryan Rollins is another guy who I'd imagine the Knicks. Ryan Rollins from Toledo, yeah, shot creator. If we're talking about shot creationery, he's got it.
We're making up new words left and right. It's okay.
I'll use that in my next article. I'll give you a shout out.
Please do.
He's a fun player just because he can get his own bucket in a lot of different ways. And I think if you're the Knicks, I mean, you got to value that.
And of course, we end as we always do. Tell us we have to hold you to this. Obviously, your job depends on this one. What will the Knicks do on draft night?
I think it'll be AJ Griffin if they stick. I've kind of gone back and forth on that. I think Griffin would be the guy. If he trades down, I don't see the trade up happening. Even though I'm sure that they're really trying to get it done, I can't see them trading up. I would either guess he trades down or out. Like one of those drafts where everybody boos, but it might not be a terrible decision. But if they stick, I would go with Griffin.
So you think out is a possibility, but you don't think it would be for Brogdon. So you think maybe like a future asset potentially could be in play?
Yeah. I think they could just go for another 2023 pick and just add it to the collection and either use it to pick somebody or include it in the trade. I just can't see the Brogdon thing happening. It just seems too against his strategy since he kind of came into the organization.
It's classic Knicks. It's a classic Knicks move, which is why it's like every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. That's how I feel with this Brogdon thing. I don't want to believe that it is a thing. But
that was the thing. That's one of the reasons why I kind of like Rose is that he knows what classic Knicks is, and he's trying to not do that. So
it seems like it, right? But has he just been doing it long enough to dupe us into thinking he's not going to do it now? And then, Jonathan Wasserman, you're a scholar and a gentleman. Could you tell the fine folks at home where they could find you and maybe where to look for you on draft night? Are you tweeting? What are you doing?
I'll have my mock draft out tomorrow, and it'll just be updated through Thursday. I'll be on NBA TV a lot this next couple of days.
Oh, awesome! That's awesome. That's really cool.
Tomorrow night, I'll be on NBA TV doing a mock draft with Steve Smith and Andy Katz. And
so that's when, to be clear, because we're taping this Tuesday, it'll air on Wednesday. Yeah. So Wednesday night, you're going to be on NBA TV doing the mock draft.
And then Thursday, I'm doing the whole pre-draft coverage on NBA TV. So check out, if you're not in the mood to watch ESPN, check out NBA TV.
Why wouldn't anyone want to watch ESPN, Jonathan? Why do you hate ESPN? Sorry, that's a bit that we have on the show. Why do you hate? And then insert young Knicks player here.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah. Jonathan, thank you so much, man.
All right, fellas. This is fun.